Hi guys, today is the 17th of May 2019 at 51 minutes past 3 in the morning over here in the UK, and I'm going to be struggling with my thoughts and with my computer through this video, so please bear with me. I'm going to try and be as quick as possible as well. So I was looking at this scene again, and I was thinking about the reindeer that's left in the negative space here, with the X around the nose, which kind of brings me to Rudolph, December 25th, and December 26th here. Now I'm thinking this figure is the December 26th, the December 25th character attached to the 26th character, so it's kind of like joined on between those two. Looking over here, I'm thinking maybe if that's 25th, 26th, this could be 27th, could be a 2, 2, and a 7 instead of a 1 and a 5, or a 2, 2, and a 5. Not sure, different translations there, but possible for 27th. And then I was thinking maybe this one here is December 23rd with the L upside down, the T upside down, and the 3 leaves inside of that, which is LT3 or 1223. That's December 23rd. And I was thinking, I can't see anything for this being the 22nd, but then I remembered the V, and where I've been looking at that as a 5 for most of my translations, V is the 22nd of the alphabet. So I was thinking, okay, we've got 22nd, 23rd, so this would potentially be the 24th, the 25th, the 26th, and the 27th. So I'm thinking, okay, looking at that like that. And then I'll go over here, and I'm not seeing like a real connection to going backwards in terms of 21 or 20. So I was thinking this marking on the character's forehead, as we've reported before, it's kind of like resembles kind of two things, like a toupee and like stitching as well, which things could be associated with Donald Trump. And it's also kind of foreground, background encoded with one of the blades of grass in the background here. So if you follow the line, it kind of just joins neatly on here and kind of makes like a J. That's what I see here. A J here, and then the possibility of it being 1, 2, and also the possibility of it being J 1, 2, 3. Now I think they may reference 2 different dates in 2 different months beginning with J. That would be June 3rd when Donald Trump visits the UK. So something may happen to him when he comes here. Hopefully not, we'll see. Obviously, the last time he came here, there was that security mishap where the paraglider managed to kind of glide over Donald Trump with a huge sign. That was a big mistake. So maybe something like that could happen this time, but maybe something a bit more serious. And then the other reference I've got from here is January the 2nd, which I think connects with the Game of Thrones reference from Arya when she's doing that thing with Gendry, counting how many women he's been with. She says 1, 2, 20, and then he says 3. I theorize that as possibly 1, 2, 23. That's December 23rd, which again is that LT3 reference, or possibly January the 2nd, 2020, so 1, 2, 20, and then at 3 o'clock. And that may be here J2 and J3 for January the 2nd and June the 3rd. Obviously, both of those months are within the year of the pig, which is heavily referenced in both the iPad Go-To video and the Game of Thrones video, as I pointed out before. And I was thinking maybe this one, if this is June 2nd, June 3rd, maybe this is just June, the beginning of it, in terms of maybe that's where we exit. So prior to that, thinking maybe the M is referencing a particular month, and obviously we've only got 2 months that begin with M, March and May. March has passed, so now we're in May. The royal wedding coming up, and I say that because we've got this stag on fire, which is above the head of this character. Now that suggests to me like a crown, a stag crown, and again, it's just another reference from the Game of Thrones TV series they're all fighting over this iron throne, but also who gets to wear the crown, and the crown is made of stag horns or stag fawns, and this is a manipulation of the um, fawns that Jesus was made to wear during the crucifixion, and also the crown of thorns that the Antichrist wears in this video, which then disappears, which also has connections with the crown of thorns that was taken out of the Notre Dame Cathedral on April 15th when it burned down and the cathedral spire collapsed. Now, I also think this is referencing the St. George's Chapel, where the wedding is going to take place on May the 18th. So tomorrow for me, 2 days away for some of you guys. I think that will have something to do with coming from underground, which is symbolic of like maybe a bomb or something like that happening there. Interestingly enough, if I can find it in amongst all of these, I think it's this one. Yes, the two suspects that I suspected would not attend the wedding are most likely not going to be attending the wedding. So it says down here the Queen is expected to be present at the wedding, which obviously I mentioned before, as are the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge, which are Prince William and Poppy. Is it Poppy or Kate? I can't remember which one it is. Anyway, Prince William usually would be attending the FA Cup or the Football Association. And when we go back here, if we've got the potential for this being a crown, stag crown of thorns on fire, referencing the crown on fire, which would be like the royalty, royal family, the Queen, and well, the Queen is wearing the crown at the moment, so that would reference the Queen. It's very possible that the apple that we've referenced as being a number of things, but including a representation of a football as it rolls across the ground and knocks against Obama's foot, and the references to halftime and all those kind of things, could be associated with the FA Cup, which is due to have its final between Manchester City and Watford on the 18th, the same day as the wedding. And it's interesting that Watford, their logo, as you can probably see, is a stag or a deer, but you've got a clear reference to that same theory, the stag, the deer, whatever they want to call it. It may be to overlook, but it is also shaded in red, which gives us a reference to many things, but also fire and flame. Across, looking at the other logo, it is a ship on water. You may not be able to see it very clearly there, but you can check it out for yourself, or just take my word for it. Underneath it is a rose. So taking all those references, the stag or the deer, the ship on water, and the rose, we go back to the scene in the classroom. We could be seeing, the stag here, possible connection with Watford, the rose. We don't have a ship on water in this scene, but we do have a reference to a tsunami, which obviously would be in the ocean where ships are. So there's possible references to the 18th of May and the royal wedding, perhaps the tsunami coming shortly after that. Looking at these four characters that's possibly referencing May, maybe other months, but I'm thinking these two back here reference January, these over here reference December, and I'm just thinking maybe these reference May. Surely these three characters are connected, with the two being connected by the tsunami wave and the character in the middle. Previously, we've interpreted this as the legs and the hands as like the letter M or the letter W, and kind of sticking with that theory, but it could also intersect with the arms up here, making the letter Q, which would be 17, possible reference, 17th of May, 1713, or, different observations, but possibility of those being connected. So there was a lot of translations in there, and just kind of given the warning for May 18th, look out at that royal wedding, anything happening, underground explosion, maybe not at the chapel, maybe somewhere else. You know, that 9/11 event that, you know, kind of kickstarts us towards the Iraq 2.0 with Iran, which, you know, we all are hearing the news is pretty much unfolding in the way that we have been looking out for. The apple rolling across the ground 7 times. Now, I believe that had reference to 7 days after Meghan Markle gave birth, the apple being a symbolization of the birth. If that was 7 days, then it would have been on the 13th. I didn't see any kind of blackouts or tsunamis on the 13th. Only kind of blackout scenario happened in kind of Texas with all the flooding and stuff, but I don't think that's what we're looking for here, even though we have George Bush in this video who is connected with Texas, but he's not in this particular frame. Obama is. So, possible reference to 7 months after. As I said before, if it's not 7 days, then it's possible it's 7 months. The L is also a reference to the number 12, and December is the 12th month, which is also 7 months after May, in which Meghan Markle gave birth. So, we're being drawn to December again, and obviously, as pointed out in the previous scene, I've seen connections with L23, December 23rd, December 22nd, the guy with the V in his arms, the 25th and the 26th, with the reindeer Rudolph connection. The reason I say the 26th, if you don't know, I've pointed out before, the eye appears to be an eclipse, and an annular solar eclipse is when the sun creates this halo of light around the moon, which appears to be what we're seeing. If I just go back to quickly show you what I'm referencing, which appears to be what we're seeing just here. I think this is the annular solar eclipse, and this negative space gives us Rudolph with the reference to December 25th, which I think is why these two characters kind of connected. Christmas Day, Boxing Day, Christmas Eve, the 23rd, the 22nd. Again, hopefully nothing happens. We'll see. As I said, there are clear references to the Year of the Pig, strongly, especially in Game of Thrones. They repeat it over and over again. You can go back in my channel and have a look at the video if you want to see how they coded the image of the pig into the landscape of the Game of Thrones, especially in season 7, when dealing with the whites, which are, you know, all association with death and destruction and the end times. Game of Thrones is heavily connected to Revelation 12. The woman, the dragon, she calls her love the moon, which is a reference to the moon and the stars. You know, you have the red comet in there, which is a reference to the dragon with the tail ready to sweep the stars out of the sky. There's a lot of biblical references going on, even in this season 8, the last episode that we just seen, episode 5. The character Arya walks up to a white horse, but it's covered in ash and blood, so it's actually an ashen horse, and she is a faceless assassin, which is basically a society of death, and she gets on the horse and rides away, which is the image of the figure of death. You know, he who sat on the ashen horse was named Death. Obviously, in this reference, they're using a she. They've just got to manipulate it in whatever way they can, flip it upside down, reverse it, make it backwards, just so it's an insult to the Heavenly Father. Apart from that, as I said before, I think the reason we're going dark in this scene and then we're stuck with just torchlight illuminating the apple is because of a power outage. If this is referencing 7 months later in the L 12th month, December, then be looking out for a power outage around December sometime. I'm not exactly sure of the date on this one. It could be December 5th. It could be a little bit later, but I think it's earlier in the game. Last year in December was when the Transformer explosion lit up New York, and we saw how it turned the sky blue and everything like that. It's possible there's a repeat of that this year, but on a brand new scale. And obviously we've had Donald Trump just um, initiating the, what is it? I can't remember what it is. It's like an emergency declaration. I can't remember exactly what the term is, but to start protecting the electric grid against the possibility of an EMP. Too little, too late, I say, but at least he can turn around and say he did it and Obama didn't, which is a theme I find with the Trump administration, especially Trump. It's unfortunate I left this video too long. There was, actually, it doesn't really matter, does it? I can always go back, Google Doodles, and show you what I was going to show you before it changed. So the other day, they had this image up. I haven't looked at the others so far. I was stuck on this one for a while. It may pop out to some of you guys almost instantly. It did take me like a couple of seconds to see, but there is, again, the image of the pig in here. It's easiest to focus to find it if you see the triangle in the middle as the nostrils, even though they put 3 dots here. You can kind of see the nostrils, the one eye over here, the pink ear flopping over. This one down here would be the mouth. Like a mosaic kind of image, not quite put together, just pieces to give you a general, I don't know, a general overview of what they're trying to convey, which I see the image of the pig. And again, it's just referenced in this torchlight that he's using here, which to me again suggests something to do with light, electricity. He's using the electron microscope, reference to electric. In between the L and the 5, 12/5, December 5th. Just taking a little stab in the dark there, a little bit of a guess, as most of this is, but just interpretations and seeing what I can come up with, and watching out for those possible events if they do unfold. So, around December sometime, lights out, whether it's towards the beginning of December, December 5th, or towards the end of December, December 28th, around that time, I don't know, but I'm getting a reference to December. At least that's pretty clear to me. In the news, the Iran thing is taking a life of its own. So the US is blaming Iran for the oil tankers that got damaged. Sorry, 1 second. Just quiet this down. So the US is blaming Iran. I'm just going to try and talk over it till it calms down. Try and beat it into submission. I'll just hold it up. Okay, so I'll have to do it this way. The US blames Iran for damaging tankers in the Gulf of Oman. There was 4 of them. The story they were coming up with is that Iran placed bombs on the of these ships and blew them in order to sabotage them. That story didn't really hold up. It kind of fizzled out in the news and wasn't really talked about again. So the way I see it is, they're trying to kind of find ways of getting to Iran by blaming something on them, and that's why I say I'm looking out for something in the UK, especially around the 18th and the royal family. Something happens there, opportune time to blame someone for the attack, and with the United States and other countries stepping up their readiness for war with Iran, it's highly likely that they would be the ones they would choose to blame. Something we've looked at for a long time now. Meanwhile, as I say, the US military in Syria and Iraq are on high alert for an imminent threat from Iranian-backed forces. The US military personnel have been put on high alert in Iraq and Syria over fears of an imminent threat from Iranian-backed forces. Not only that, but well, I was going to say not only that, the embassies themselves, they've removed non-emergency personnel, and it kind of goes in contradiction, at least for a little while, with the leader of the British forces over in the Middle East, saying there was no increased threat from Iranian-backed forces until he got a bit of a, I don't know, backlashing. Um, and then it came out with CENTCOM saying they're correcting the British general. US forces in Iraq and Syria are on heightened alert for Iranian attacks. So they had to make sure that everyone was on the same page. You know, it kind of showed a little bit of a crack in their plan with one person in quite an important position saying that he hadn't seen anything and then getting reprimanded, quickly reversing, trying to backtrack on what he said. In reference to the embassies, Germany and the Netherlands halt training schemes in Iraq as tensions rise. So moves follow the US embassy in Baghdad, all but emergency staff to leave. So they're clearing out Iraq. Kind of, that's the reason they were kind of Donald Trump was looking to pull troops out of Syria. It's all in anticipation of when there is conflict between Iran, the United States, Israel, the rest of the US allies, that Iran won't be able to cause uh, that many casualties in Syria and Iran with their militias, because their forces won't be there, or at least will be well prepared for such an event. Although the Iranians also say they are well prepared for such an event, so you know, just keeping our eyes open. The threat of Iran attack raised by UK as Middle East tensions surge. Troops are on alert. Britain's in Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, and Qatar have been put on high alert, and officials have raised the threat level for UK forces and diplomats in Iraq as tensions between the US and Iran spiral out of control. So again, this just goes with the theory that if anything happens in the UK, they're ready to blame it on Iran, ready to do that 9/11 false flag kind of thing, go to war over, nuclear program. Again, it's just weapons of mass destruction. Whether they can, they exist or not. If they do exist, I'm sure Iran will use them. If they don't exist, then it's just another false flag leading us into a world war, which can spiral rapidly out of control, considering all the other things that we have teetering on the edge at the moment: the stock market, the oil market, war with Venezuela, trade war with China, Russia constantly in the specter of Ukraine and Poland, creating war in Europe, Brexit, yellow vests in France. It's just so much. So, if things were to suddenly spiral out of control in one region, it can, light the match and quickly devolve around the entire globe, which is why we pay attention and watch all these things just in case they try and catch us unawares. In reference to the asteroid impact that we've all kind of had our minds on, whether you think of it as an asteroid or whether you think of it as something else, to me it really doesn't matter. It's just in the name. Um, if you believe in the Bible, then you believe that there's the reference to the burning mountain, which I think is a volcano crashing into the ocean. There's also, the great star burning that comes down, and I think that's a reference to an asteroid meteor in, our language, English language, in our modern day and our terms. But whether it's real or not is another thing to be decided on altogether, because this video shows like a cloud that looks like an apocalyptic meteor hurtling towards Earth. And I mean, you can just see it in the video. It might take a couple of seconds to play, so please give it a few seconds to do so. But you can see look. And people are saying it's fake, but I don't think the video itself is fake. I think the image the video is recording is fake. And it kind of confirms to me that they have technology in place to make it look very real. All they need now, below that, dark night, all you can see is really this. Like, you can't see all the sky below and underneath. And then they just need like a couple of nuclear impacts to make it look like a massive meteor has impacted somewhere. And if this is, the one that they've kind of given us subliminal message in movies like Armageddon, then it would be a meteor into the ocean, and obviously very difficult for human beings to see what's going on out in the middle of the ocean. And it could just be nuclear detonations under the ocean. You don't have to worry about the questions about why there was a mushroom cloud. Um, you just kind of blow it under the ocean and make it look like a meteor impact. And obviously, you can explain away radioactive water by saying, it's a meteor, it's an asteroid, it was radioactive. What do you know? We're NASA, we're female, we're this, we're that, the other. So you guys prepare for this kind of deception that I think they're already planning. As I said, they've already got Japan with their satellites up there, with the capability of shooting out little kind of like color rockets that explode during re-entry, making it look like a meteor shower. So that combined with this can make it look like, you know, further the stars are being swept out the sky and the great star burning is crashing down. So just keep your eyes on it, please. Um, Back to the royal wedding. As I said, um, Prince William and his wife will be attending, whereas Prince Harry and his wife won't be attending. Something I suspected. If something does happen there, then that really boosts Harry up the chain towards being king. If Prince Charles doesn't go, he would be king, but I just have a feeling he would abdicate the throne to Prince Harry. For some reason, I just have that feeling that he would do that. Um, Meanwhile, after the wedding, if nothing happens there, Prince William is due to take a trip down the River Thames, and I just had this in mind, the Antichrist coming out on the river. Um, After the cathedral situation with Notre Dame, and maybe after, during the situation at the chapel, from my interpretations. But if something does happen at the chapel, um, this riverboat ride down the River Thames was due to take place on Tuesday, the 21st, which is next week. So if something was to happen, maybe Prince William would take his place. The reason I say that is because it's a pretty important event. The strategy has been designed by the Port of London Authority, the Metropolitan Police, London Fire Brigade, Royal National Lifeboat Institution, London Ambulance Service, and the Maritime and Coast Guard. So with Prince Harry being, pretty military, being in the military, and having a lot of connections to it, especially with the Invictus Games and the whole I Am reference, I think he would still attend an event like this in place of his brother if something was to happen, and that could be the connection we have to this character coming out on the river. If something did happen at the church, then that would be connected with the fire and the chapel exploding, St. George's Chapel. Obviously, I don't hope these things happen. I'm just putting out the interpretations. I think I have actually covered everything I wanted to cover. There was a lot in there, so if you managed to stick with it, thank you. If you didn't, then still thank you for trying. But obviously, you won't be able to hear the thank you because you didn't make it. But just a swift recap: May 18th, keep an eye out around this royal wedding. You've got the FA Cup at the same time going on. Possible chance for Prince Harry to shoot up the scale, claim his crown, or the stag crown, Game of Thrones kind of thing going on, and then his child coming up behind him would be second in line to the throne. We don't know how that would go. There's been a lot of references, subliminal references, to child kings. So that's not just Game of Thrones. There's a couple of movies out there, even a movie actually entitled "The Child Who Would Be King." So it's possible, you know, it really doesn't matter your age. If you're in the line of succession, you would have someone. If you're really really young, you'd have someone kind of ruling until you become of age, on in your stead. But you can still be a child king. So keep an eye out for that. Yes, you guys have a good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and may the Heavenly Father bless you.